What's up everyone, my name's Zane and welcome to my results from 40 hours of Efficient Slayer. Now obviously for this one, because it's a much longer process, there are a few things to note. So first of all, for the stats we had at both the start and the end of this, please check the description, but probably the most important one is that we started with 85 Slayer and we finished with 90. The other thing to briefly mention is how I'm defining Efficient Slayer, which is basically using the best methods available to me to achieve the most experience I can wherever possible. And my basic strategy for this was to use Duradel for every task, use Piety on every melee task, use a cannon whenever I can, use barrage spells whenever I can, and to skip all of these slower tasks. But with all of that said though, let's go ahead and get straight into the loot and the supplies. So starting things off, here is all of the loot that we got from doing 40 hours of Efficient Slayer, and it comes out to 28.5 mil in total. And as you can see, there's just a lot of miscellaneous and assorted items, some runes, some ensouled heads, lots of different herbs and seeds, and probably the bulk of the profit comes from the 3 abyssal whips and all of the rune items as well. And I should also note we managed to get 16 dark totems and 32 ancient shards in these 40 hours. Overall, I wasn't too surprised with this. I thought that the loot might actually be a bit worse, so I was quite happy that it came out to what it did, because you have to keep in mind that I was skipping basically every normally profitable task like gargoyles and curasks, which basically does dramatically eat into your profit. And since I know that those of you who want to train Slayer will be super curious, I also thought I'd show you every single supply that I used across these 40 hours. To be honest, I don't think any of this really requires that much explanation. We were basically just using the most efficient methods to get experience, which obviously means you're going to have a hefty supply cost attached to that. And the supply cost for this came out to 31.3 mil in total, but keep in mind that is across 40 hours. But now that you've seen that as well though, let's go ahead and get into the stats, because there is a lot to go through. So as you can immediately see, using this method of training Slayer will actually round out your account quite nicely if you're looking to train every single combat stat at once. Starting things off though, the most important stat here is Slayer, which comes out at just shy of 51k experience per hour, which is an incredible experience rate per hour and about twice the average rate you'd get just doing normal inefficient Slayer. The other skills are all very decent considering the fact that this is not an experience rate taken from active training, because obviously there are going to be hours where you're only using melee and ranged, or only using magic, and yet across 40 hours on average, all of these are actually pretty decent, especially hit points, which is far above what you'd normally expect to get per hour. Moving on to the loot and supplies, as you already saw, we have a total loot of 28.5 mil, and a supply cost of 31.3 mil. Importantly, that means that our profit per hour doing this method, keeping in mind this is the most efficient method of training Slayer and therefore the most expensive method available, comes out to just minus 70k, which in my opinion is well worth the cost given you're almost doubling the Slayer experience you'll be getting per hour over doing normal Slayer tasks that are generally profitable. Keep in mind as well that this cost can be entirely offset if you include even just one traditionally profitable monster in your rotation, say gargoyles for example. You would then totally break even if not make a minor profit. So really in the scheme of things, especially considering this is a late game method, you can basically consider doing Efficient Slayer as profit neutral. You're going to get a butt ton of experience basically for free. I also kept track of some additional stats for you guys. First of all, we managed to complete 78 tasks in total. Also, the amount of Slayer points we finished with was 80 less than we started with, which I've got to admit did surprise me because I expected that being this selective with my tasks would mean I'd run out of Slayer points well before the 40 hours was up. But actually, in terms of Slayer points at least, it's basically neutral. You don't get loads of Slayer points more than you'll start with, but you don't really lose that many considering this is over 40 hours. Also, we killed 37 superiors in total, which basically averages just shy of 1 an hour, and maybe the most important stats here of the additional stats is the GP per experience per Slayer, which is 1.37, which really again is not bad considering this is a late game method, and the overall GP per experience rate was 0.27, which means again this is an incredibly good method of training all your stats, especially traditionally more expensive ones like magic when you're using Ice Barrage. With the stats covered, we can now move on to discussing the method itself. And the one thing I found that really did surprise me was that it's a lot simpler than I thought it would be. Because getting into this, I did a lot of research and it seemed incredibly complicated. But the method itself is actually super simple, especially once you get into the groove of doing it and you know which tasks to look for and which tasks to immediately skip. And just to briefly go over it for those of you who are curious, you basically want to burst or barrage Necriels, Dust Devils, Ankus and Abyssal Demons, and you'll want to extend those tasks if possible, and use Bracelets of Slaughter to lengthen the tasks whenever you get them. These both account for the basically free magic experience that you'll be getting, and also account for really high Slayer experience rates per hour. The one thing I'd note with doing these though is that you should be picking up the loot as you do them, banking and coming back, because it is well worth your time to do that. Next up, the canon task that you'll want to be using melee on with Piety as well is Dagannoths, Sukwas and Trolls, and again you want to extend them where possible because each of them pulls in a very decent experience rate per hour, all of them above 50k. After that, you can also use Cannon with melee for points if you need it, and for those you'll want to do Black Demons, Bloodvelds and Greater Demons if you're concerned about points. And again, for points only, if you get a Black Dragon task, then you will want to do Baby Black Dragons with melee in the Taverley dungeon. And obviously if you're 93 Slayer and above, you'll also want to add Smoke Devils to your Burst/Barrage list. But Efficient Slayer is literally as simple as that. You extend the tasks that get you lots of points, which are basically all of the Barrage or Burst tasks and all of the Cannon tasks that you do for experience, and use an Expeditious Bracelet on any task you're doing just for points. Basically Black Demons, Bloodvelds, Greater Demons or Baby Black Dragons to finish them quicker so you can get back to getting the higher experience. And in terms of the tasks themselves, none of them are especially dangerous or difficult to do. Obviously the barraging and bursting ones aren't really AFK at all, but any one where you're doing cannon with melee, especially the ones for points, especially Greater Demons and Black Demons, are super AFK and easy to do. One thing I would say about this is I do recommend using Proselyte Armor on every single task you do, because what I found is the prayer bonus helps a lot more than the strength bonus does for Bandos, and you can also then keep your Proselyte Armor on when you're doing your magic tasks as well, which means that you're going to be spending less time banking and swapping out your gear. And finally, I know this has been a super long video, so allow me to give you a summary of everything I have found. First of all, Efficient Slayer is one of the best methods in the game for training all of your combat stats at once. It's approximately twice as fast Slayer experience per hour as doing normal Slayer. It has a very minor cost per hour and effectively breaks even, despite using the most expensive and fast methods in the game, along with skipping the most profitable tasks. And again, this could easily be offset by doing a few of those profitable tasks. It's also near enough neutral in terms of Slayer points, which means that this method is generally sustainable to do. Moving about for new tasks helps to keep things fresh, and none of the tasks are especially difficult to do. The bursting and barraging ones aren't AFK, but the rest of them are pretty much semi-AFK to do. And overall, this is likely the best method of training Slayer in anticipation for the Kebos Lowlands update, or just in general. Paying 70k per hour for twice as much Slayer experience as normal, along with much more combat experience as well, is well worth the price, especially in the late game. And with all of that covered, that is it for this video, so I do hope you enjoyed and found it helpful. And as always, if there is anything else you'd like to see me cover, feel free to drop me a line down below and I will do my best to make it happen. Since it's Christmas, I hope you're all having a wonderful time and I hope you have a great new year as well. And as you can probably guess, this video took absolutely ages to make, so I am going to take a week break so I can make sure that I enjoy the holiday period as well, and I will be back after New Year's with more videos as per usual every Tuesday and Friday. So again, I hope you're having an awesome Christmas and a happy new year, and I will see you all next time. Bye guys!